The stone had fought him for possession of his own soul. It feels so close to you. Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late.
I hear black is the new day.
There had to be some way to use the Iblis stone. It was old, wasn't it? People are so much cleverer now. And Renato was pretty sure he was cleverer than most people. The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can hate you, mighty. Who said that? Give blood. It was the stone, eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him. Why not capture the core of Skyripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "It's the core," said the stone anxiously. But even though Renato knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it. The stone bothered him. He hated being told what to do. Wasn't that why he joined the rebellion? Wasn't that why he'd refused to be a soldier? He'd agreed to come on board only if he could freelance. The stone felt a bit clingy, and he had a feeling it did not have his best interests at heart. The sage Calaveras had told him where to find the Sky River, a weapon capable of challenging the gods. Even without its armature, the core would still possess great power. He would go there. The moment he landed the Farfarer, Reynardo had a rare feeling of regret. It's not too late, he thought. He could turn around and sail for Zenobia's island. He frowned. Wait a minute. He didn't want to kill Zenobia, did he? Sure, technically she was the enemy, but they'd been at Sword Fu school together. They'd never been lovers, but somehow they'd been closer. She'd told him every secret about herself. Except the biggest one. That she was the Emperor's daughter. No. Kill Zenobia, whispered the stone. Before it's too late. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. The stone hadn't lied about what it could do for him. With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm. You're weak, whispered the stone. The core will kill you. Are you afraid of it? No, don't be ridiculous. Just carry it, and if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically. Reynardo did not trust rocks that talked in his head. He went onwards. As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical. No, it's too much power. We will rip a hole in space and time. He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision, was it? The stone had sent him its darkest fears, hadn't it? He had a sudden impulse to do exactly that. He raised his right fist and plunged it into the core. There was a rush of light. He thought he could hear the stone screaming. And then he passed out. When Reynardo came to, the core was gone. But the Iblis stone was no longer black, but glowing with a blue light. And it was silent. I can't hear you, he sang out, and yoo-hoo! It didn't answer. Ha, he said. He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he? As the Farfarer made its way toward the Nexus, Reynardo watched sparks fly out of the core. The Iblis stone sucked them in hungrily. You'd think the stone would want this kind of power, wouldn't it? Thought Reynardo. Well, the scientists would explain it all. This time, Reynardo was sure he'd figured out how to use the core safely. See? He'd trusted his gut, and it had worked out. That's what it meant to be a hero. To ignore the naysayers and the oddmakers, and do what you knew was right, and have it turn out to be the right thing. Well, he wasn't worried. Once he got to the observatory, the scientist toads could explain it. Then he could carry the war into the enemy's camp and destroy them all. Oh dear, he was getting a little bloodthirsty, wasn't he? Bernardo had never felt better in his life. Normally, a battle would wear him down and he would need a night's sleep. Now he felt like he could go all night and all day. He felt like people were cheering him on, and he could practically hear their applause as he slew one raven after another. The Iblis Stone and the Sky Ripper Core. Two artifacts from the time of legends. Bernardo was becoming a legendary hero, wasn't he? He had enough power to save the rebellion, but he had to understand this power, so he would not misuse it.
Get this right, the Imperial Army run out of ravens.
Getting nowhere. Fast. The toads at the observatory measured the stone with their occult devices. I fed it the core of Sky Ripper, explained Renato. No more feed planet souls. But the core is not an unlimited energy source, said one toad. Another said,
there's a feedback loop, you see, which could overload the stone.
Yeah, the stone doesn't actually feed on souls,
claimed a third.
But on pain of killing another sentient being. If you can truly be at peace with yourself, it would not overload.
This was all very confusing. At peace? Yes, the mountains were peaceful and quiet, but he now had the power to turn the tides. He should report to the Rebellion Council and prepare for the decisive battle. The one thing he understood from all the toad arguments, maybe the stone did not feed on blood or souls or rage. It fed on empathy. It fed on the pain he felt when he put an end to another being's existence. Even if that other being was a raven intent on killing him. If he could find peace, then he could use the power of the Iblis Stone without being taken over by its evil. Yes, that was the way to defeat the Iblis Stone. The mountains. He would go to the mountains. He could find peace there. Unfortunately, the mountains were not empty. There were ravens everywhere. No matter. He had to fight, yes, but he didn't have to be angry. Parry, dodge, slash, and breathe. Yes, focus on the rhythm, the dance of it, not on the blood or the raven's call as they died. Ah, it was working. He wasn't feeling those dark jolts of eldritch energy. He wasn't feeding the Iblis stone. Hey, wanna hook up?
This chest contained a Vorpal sword.
The stone was still silent. His mind was his own, and his heart, too. He bore them no ill will, these ravens. They were doing their job. They were expressing their nature. Dance, roar, parry, jab, and breathe. It was all so simple, wasn't it? Something was missing. He didn't feel truly at peace. Wait. Wasn't this near where Calaveras lived? The sage would help him figure it all out.
Igla Stone, silenced by the Sky Ripper's core, had given Renato enough power to challenge the Imperial fleet. But what Renato was seeking was inner peace. The rebellion was on the verge of extinction, but it would have to wait.
At the end of the mountain path, he found the wise Calaveras in his workshop. "Do you fix souls or only artifacts?" he asked the sage.
Does your soul need fixing?
Asked the sage. "I've been killing a lot of ravens lately," he told the sage.
You're a fox,
said Calaveras.
and to kill birds is part of your nature. Take joy in it. I mean, I might as well worry about eating flies. Would you like a fly?
It was true. That's what he had forgotten. The joy. Now he was ready for the final battle. The Farfarer cut through the clouds. The air had never felt so sweet since he was a child.
There it was, the dreaded Imperial fleet. He could smell wet hemp ropes ahead, wood and tar, and ravens. Even the fleet smelt good, somehow. He was ready.
He was ready.
Renato had it all squared away in his head.
He would kill the Emperor. Isengrim III had begun well, but he had gone mad. He was trying to invoke the lost gods by means of dark, blasphemous rituals. That was a secret. But the victims had spoken to Renato. The ghosts had spoken. No. No anger. Renato could not afford anger. It was empowering the crystal in his sword. That made him stronger, but it clouded his mind. He would not be a hero. A hero strives. Renato would just be one with everything. The Emperor would die, and the wheel would turn, and all would be restored without rancor, without sorrow, without pain.
If only had some sort of gun that's made for it.
A word for a lot of ravens. Like a doofus of ravens?
But the more he thought about it, and he had so much more time to think about it now that he was not worrying about the battle, killing the Emperor would not change anything. Another would take his place. Perhaps Zenobia. Perhaps the Speaker of the Rebel Council, and power would corrupt them too, and death would make grief, and grief would lead to hatred. He must lead by example. Reject the violence. Reject the desire to create violence. But how? Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? Finally, he came to the Emperor's ship. The path behind him was strewn with dead ravens. The path to enlightenment. His mistake, he realized, was trying to change the world. The world would spin and the wheel would revolve whether he strove against it or not. What he had to do was nothing. He had attained enlightenment. He sat down, adopted a full lotus position, and began to meditate. And all around him, the warriors stopped fighting too. They knew. They could feel his enlightenment. They gave up fighting, dropped their weapons, and became his disciples. No, just kidding. The nearest raven stabbed him with a sword and then chopped off his head. I might not have thought this through properly. Thought Renado's head as it rolled around the deck and died. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renado knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renado had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Renado wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Renado could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it.
As he set foot on the island, Bernardo couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lapino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Bernardo felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky River?
Bernardo never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it?
Had to be a way to use the Sky Ripper without causing a catastrophe. Why? Maybe it's always dangerous, he imagined Zenobia saying. Always the voice of reason, that one. Well, there had to be a way to use the Sky Ripper because not being able to use it was boring. So there. When he was still a thief, Bernardo had always been attracted to the women with the biggest chests. No, that's not what I meant. To rob, I mean. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway.
The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Renato asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually, they worked out. After all, he was a hero. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because, know your enemy. All right, maybe he should stop pretending. He knew exactly how she felt about him. But their love affair always ended with a tragic death. Unless, maybe he could find a way to dodge tragedy. Surely he could, couldn't he? There was a cat in this one, and something useful. Oh, look! Fracking. He couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core. Could he? Renato wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core? Maybe because the results tended to be disastrous. These streets were familiar. The swordfish school was closed now, but he had been down that street 1,000 times. He knew that pub. He knew that alley. He knew the alley behind it much too well. No wonder Zenobia had chosen to invade this island herself.
Here, fishy!
Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished. And he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, soon he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Sky River, the Iblistone, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in.
That makes no sense. It's a trap,
Shouted the Emperor.
I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators.
If Renato came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father. You're lying, she said. Somehow you're lying. The spell hadn't worn off yet. He had to tell the truth. The trick was in making sure she wouldn't believe it. The core is perfectly safe, he said. And he tried his hardest to sound sincere. So is the Iblistone. In fact, I was trying to get them myself. Fine then. Interrogate her. She said angrily. I gave you a chance. The Emperor's interrogators were not especially gentle. It was a short, safe landing. At least this part of the Nexus hadn't changed too much. Zenobia had been taking him to the Imperial outpost. She'd never expect him to go there by himself. Well, maybe she would. You never knew with her. Bernardo knew Zenobia, and Zenobia knew him. She'd suspected a trick. Now he'd vanished. She would probably guess that was his plan all along. Perfect. Maybe she wouldn't use the Sky Ripper. At least not without taking it to the scientists at the observatory first. Meanwhile, the Emperor would be coming to the outpost personally. This could be good. Bernardo was face to face with the Emperor's bodyguard. They looked very tough, but the Emperor held them back.
Oh, where's my daughter?
And how would I know that? Bernardo grinned at him.
She lured me here so that you could kill me, didn't she?
Ah, don't be ridiculous, said Bernardo, trying his best to sound convincing. She loves you.
Oh, I knew it. The rabbit told me I couldn't trust her.
The Emperor hopped out the door. His phalanx of bodyguards retreated carefully. Bernardo heard someone call, "Arrest her!" as they left. Well, that's a job well done, thought Bernardo. Now the fleet would be in all sorts of disarray. But maybe he could find her in the mountains. She always used to go to the mountains to hide from the world. Maybe he could even turn her against her father. Or maybe he could reap the benefits of the chaos he had sown. It was time to report to the Rebel Council, and then launch the attack on a divided and very confused Imperial fleet. Bernardo was very proud of himself. He told the Empire everything, but now they didn't believe anything, and it looked like the Emperor didn't trust his daughter anymore either. There were some advantages to having a slippery reputation, weren't there? Bernardo wondered if he'd really fooled the Empire. He guessed he'd know soon enough. If the skies darkened with 1,000 dropships, then he'd know the Empire believed his map at the rebel base's secret location. They certainly seemed to be looking for it. There were ravens everywhere. But where weren't there ravens these days?
Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Bernardo. No?
Maybe the Emperor would attack Zenobia. The Ravens, divided into two armies, would slaughter each other. Then the rebellion could just show up and claim victory. The Council would be overjoyed that Bernardo had given away all their secrets. See? It was actually very fine weather, except for the occasional shower of ravens. And no one was burning the ruins down with the mighty power of a god's eye. If the Empire believed anything he said, they certainly weren't showing it.
Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
As he told his hilarious adventures to the rebel council, he began to realize they weren't laughing. Just staring at him with those big bug eyes.
Zenobia let you escape? Asked the speaker. How do we know you're not a double agent?
Then I wouldn't tell you about her at all.
Maybe you're trying to sound like an idiot, so we don't realize how clever you are, croaked the speaker.
No, I promise you, I really am that much of an idiot, Renato was about to say when a half-dozen Imperial ships began to bomb the base.
He's betrayed us!
Croaked the toads, and Renato decided it would be good to be somewhere else.
He boarded the Farfarer and got out of there.
The wind ruffled Renato's fur the wrong way. So, the rebels thought he was lying too? Because a half-dozen lousy dropships that probably just tripped over the rebel base? Okay, technically, he had betrayed its location, but not willingly. And he'd made up for it, hadn't he? Then, something exploded. A cannon shot. The Farfarer plunged out of the clouds. The rebels had hit his ship.
As the Farfarer plummeted towards the abyss, he launched himself into the sails of an Imperial ship. The Farfarer was gone. It had been a beautiful ship. And fast. It could do the Kestrel run in 12 furlongs. Or so the salesman had told him.
He would show them. He would be the hero of the final battle. They'd know whose side he was on then. That's what it meant to be a hero. To go on fighting, even when both sides were trying to kill you.
Right into the middle of the fleet. It was a glaring weakness in the defense. Renato remembered when the Emperor had first come to the throne. He built universities and libraries. He used to invite scientists to dinner. What could have made that toad so afraid of death that he would risk bringing back the lost gods?
generals were fighting ravens everywhere, and not a single weapon in sight. No one was summoning giant murder birds out of the clouds. There were no locusts, no rain of fire. Something blew up nearby, and Venado decided it was not time to stop and ponder. Just as well. He liked acting much better than pondering.
You know what I hate about you guys? Everything.
Finally, Venado reached the Emperor's ship, and there he saw a strange sight. Zenobia being led in shackles by Lapino with a squad of ravens. What? Lapino was working with the ravens? Was he some sort of traitor? Of course Lapino was working with the ravens. But the Emperor still thought Zenobia was a traitor? Venado felt oddly bad about that. Should he run down there and rescue her? Oh, but she was the enemy. Then he heard a whistling sound. He looked straight up and saw a rebel ship. It was dropping rather large bombs. One of them kept getting bigger as it fell. Huh? Oh. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Venado knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Venado had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Venado finally realized that Lapino was a traitor to the cause, and maybe Venado could use that somehow. Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given... Mappino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only